Good evening and welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Revere School Committee. Please rise to salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of the members.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo.
Here.
Mr. Ferranti.
Here.
Mrs. Gravelisi.
Here.
Mr. Kingston.
Here.
Mrs. Milbury Ellis.
Here.
Ms. Ty.
Here.
Mayor Arrigo.
Here. Okay, we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is recognition. There's none. We'll move to the consent calendar. Ms. Gravelisi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'd like to take the student activity account off of the consent calendar to vote here at the public meeting. A few amendments we'd have to make is McKinley School is actually the Hill School. Seacoast is actually the City Lab. And then the three schools, McKinley, Paul Revere, and Wayland, all have a $5,000 dollar amount. That was because they were extended day. That amount should be $10,000. So those are the only amendments. So the communication from Matt Cruz was the Department of Education audit guidelines recommends that the school committee annually approve the student activity account that will be in use district-wide. Please have the school committee review the attached listing of student activities and vote to approve for the 2022-2023 school year. So if anyone would like to make a motion to approve.
Mr. Kingston.
Could we just add 10,000 for the city lab as well?
Oh, I didn't see that. Dr. Kelly, the City Lab has a $5,000.
It's a smaller class enrollment, but I always say that bigger kids cost more money. So I think they'd be grateful to have $10,000 for clubs and activities. $10,000 doesn't go very far these days, as you all know.
Mrs. Rizzo.
Can I just ask, when things are amended, can we all be included on the conversation? I got this information 45 minutes ago, and somewhere in between, it was amended, and I didn't get any notice on that. So I'd like to be part of the conversation when it's being had.
Okay. Any other members? So,
Motion to vote the listing of student activity accounts with the amendments.
okay, so motion made by Mr. Kingston, seconded by Ms. Ty. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo.
Present?
Mr. Ferranti.
Yes.
Mrs. Gravelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Kingston.
Yes.
Mrs. Milbury Ellis.
Yes.
Ms. Ty.
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. Okay, so now we will entertain the rest of the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent calendar?
Motion to approve consent calendar?
Second.
Mrs. Rizzo made the motion, seconded by Ms. Franti. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo.
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti.
Yes.
Mrs. Gravelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Kingston.
Yes.
Mrs. Milbury Ellis.
Yes.
Ms. Ty.
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to public speak. If any members of the public in person or online would like to speak, if you're online, please raise your hand virtually, and Dr. Kelly will promote you to be able to address the school committee.
Mr. Mayor, I see no hands raised.
Okay. We'll move on now to the superintendent report. Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a few items on the superintendent's report tonight, but we're going to begin with a presentation from our curriculum team. Dr. Porter, Dr. Costa, and Ms. Supis are here to share with the school committee updates on significant changes to curriculum that are ongoing in the K through 12 school system. So without further ado, I'll invite the three of them up. Oops. And if you give me 1 second, I'm going to get your presentation up here. And you can just give me a shout when you want me to change.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So thank you, Dr. Kelly and members of the school committee for having us here tonight to share this update. You already introduced us, so we can go past that to the next slide. Thank you. So we just wanted to take some time to share some areas of improvement with curriculum and instruction and see if we had any questions. We have a list here of items that we wanted to cover tonight. We're going to start with the Gleam Grant in middle school literacy. Then we're going to talk about the Rethinking Grading Practices Grant, which is for Revere High School. Then Ms. Supis will talk about elementary literacy. Then we'll talk about the Accelerating Math Grant and some updates to STEM, and then take any questions that you may have for us. Okay. So I'm going to start with the Gleam Grant. So we were very fortunate to be one of 5 districts in the state to receive the Track 2 grant. The grant stands for Growing Literacy Equity. That is for our 3 middle schools in Revere. Our initial award was a little over $120,000. So it focuses on implementing a multi-tiered system of support in the middle school. So basically, we had to evaluate our current literacy practices to make sure that we had practices in place to reach all different kinds of learners. This is my personal passion, so I was very, very proud and very excited to do this work. In year 1, DESE partnered us with TNTP. They were a wonderful partner for this work. We had a leadership team that was made up of TNTP, the principals from the 3 middle schools, educators, and coaches. We met once a month. We did some learning walks with the principals and the coaches in TNTP to observe classroom literacy practices in our middle school ELA classrooms. We performed a thorough needs assessment. So that included more classroom observations of every single middle school ELA or literacy teacher. Teachers uploaded curricular documents and materials, and then we did focus groups with teachers and students. So out of all that work, we found some areas of need and things that we needed to focus on, including making sure that we were really focused on student-centered instructional practices, and that we had some work to do on our core program of instruction to ensure that it was rigorous enough for all learners. So out of that came our literacy instructional framework, which we're very proud of. We had a team this summer that included Brianna and I, the middle school principals, coaches, and teachers. So we have a vision, a core belief, an instructional framework, and a plan for how we're going to address the needs of our students. We have plans around professional growth time for teachers, a block. This is just a sample. It's a literacy block outline that we came up with. We have something like this for the elementary school, but we didn't have it for the middle school. One of the major findings was that we needed to focus on consistency across the 3 schools, both in our core program, and then really focus on beefing up our tiered system of intervention, which we're going to work on this year. And Dr. Kelly, when you're ready, you can go to the next slide, which is on the grading grant. This is another thing that we're very passionate about. So since 2015, Dr. Coster and I have co-led the Grading Practices Subcommittee. So we've done a lot of work around our grading practices in Revere. We were one of 5 high schools in the state to receive this grant in the amount of $300,000. So that helps us to release a lead teacher to help guide the work that's already been in process. But DESE recognizes that when you're talking about high school, we have different needs, such as making sure that kids are, not penalized moving into higher ed when we move away from a traditional system of grading. So that's going to be a lot of our work. We're very excited to work with Chris Bowen and our RHS team to support the work. We're going to be in a network with DESE, and Rennie Center is the partner. We've had some preliminary meetings with them, and we're going to continue to drive that work of our core beliefs, which was approved by the school committee several years ago. This just talks about moving away. You can click on it if you wanted, Dr. Kelly. So this is just our core beliefs around grading practices, and just really, again, moving away from that traditional system of grading, allowing kids opportunities for retakes and revisions, using their most current grades as how we're measuring their progress, and just really supporting that work. Would you add anything, Dr. Costa, to that? Okay, so that's it, and I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Supis.
Good evening. So I'm going to switch gears to elementary literacy curriculum. So as we know, last year, the elementary implemented a new literacy curriculum at K through 3. And over at the Paul Revere, they started the pilot. So it was the pilot over there the year prior. So last year, in year 1, the literacy coaches and building administration worked closely with Revere's professional lead from CCC, from the company that we work with, and then the teachers received ongoing development throughout the year in directors meetings, principal meetings, and PGT. So each building had a budget and was able to schedule PGT that worked for them in their schedule. Curated libraries were purchased for each one of the classrooms. So each classroom now was going to have a library that was culturally responsive, that was going to be able to equip the teachers with the ability to use the program as effectively as possible. And then the students also, for the first time, received a K through 5 vertically aligned writing program. So we had bits and pieces of writing curriculum in the past, but this was the first time across the district that we had a K through 5 writing curriculum, which was really incredible, and we saw some great writing output from our students. We identified students K through 5 to receive tiered intervention. So we have a new Tier 2 intervention program called SIPS, and it is directly aligned to our core program. So for the first time in the elementary, we have a direct aligned program. So we were able to run the diagnostic assessments for students and then give them the appropriate tiered intervention that they need. So that's all K through 3. So for next year, for the school year 22-23, the schools were paired together for learning walks. So what part of the year 2 implementation for K through 3, we decided that we would pair the administrators together and that they would use the time to do the learning walks with one another as a way to, kind of see what's going on across the district. So we did that, and that will happen in November, and it will also happen again in the springtime. The teachers in K through 3 will receive professional development geared towards year 2 of implementation. So very specific rollout of PD for year 1 and year 2. We're also going to try to create more opportunities to share student writing with families and caregivers. And we're going to continue to refine the data cycles to align all 6 schools. Dr. Kelly, I'm going to turn that. So again, in year 1, last year, teachers in grades 4 through 5 at the Paul Revere implemented a new curriculum called Making Meaning, and we got incredible feedback. The teachers were able to go see it in practice from the other schools, and the decision was made to do that across the district. So 4 and 5 is now going to be doing it across the district. So they received, all 4 and 5 grade teachers received professional development last May on the launch of the new program. And then in the months of June, the literacy coaches and administrators supported various unpacking sessions of the curriculum with teachers, and we created YLPs that they could have, yearly long plans that they could have for the following year. For this upcoming school year, those teachers in grades 4 through 5 will receive professional development geared towards year 1 of implementation. And then we will work with the Gleam team. So Christina, Dr. Porter just shared with you the instructional framework. What our hope is this year is to really create that vertical alignment. Even though we have one now, we want it to look very similar to the one in format for the middle school. And that's it for elementary.
Hi. So in spring, Revere Public Schools was fortunate enough to receive a over $300,000 grant from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to accelerate math learning. The purpose of that grant was to support the implementation of high-quality instructional materials in mathematics. We used that grant funding to support our implementation of 3 different programs. 2 were existing programs that we've been using for a while in Revere, ST Math and Agile Mind. And 1 is a new resource that we've begun implementing last year at the elementary level in grades 4 and 5, illustrative mathematics. And all of these programs really do a nice job of building student conceptual understanding with mathematics, supporting students in becoming critical thinkers and problem solvers. And those are the reasons why we really like those programs. And those programs were highly vetted from the state and also from Ed Reports. So this year, our focus is to continue to effectively implement ST Math and Agile Mind and to further implement illustrative mathematics at the elementary level. Our educators have been trained on using these programs. Currently, our elementary educators are receiving training as they get ready to transition to illustrative mathematics. And in terms of our STEM curriculum, in 21-22, our teachers, coaches, and administrators received PD as we began implementing illustrative mathematics at grades 4 and 5, and we're going to expand that implementation this year to K through 5. Another area of focus last year that we will be continuing this year is identifying high-quality instructional routines and instructional practices that really promote equity, those routines that foster discourse, promote problem solving, and help all students see themselves in the STEM fields. Our educators really worked in director meeting time and also with our deeper learning team to continue to promote and develop opportunities for deeper learning and more innovative assessments. So this year, the 2022 and 2023 school year, we will be using PD, director meeting PD, and professional growth time to support the implementation of illustrative math at K-5. We'll be using data cycles to analyze the implementation of our new resources and to identify next steps. And we are going to continue to support and spread instructional routines and strategies that promote equity, such as anchoring phenomenon in the science classrooms and the building thinking classroom routines and math spaces. And we'll work to refine our curriculum documents and engage in specific protocols to calibrate around proficiency, which will align with our work with the grading grant at the high school. And we have a couple of partnerships with science that we're excited about to promote inquiry and help our students really see different pathways in STEM fields. And one that we'll be starting up is with Mass Bioed to help our students see different opportunities and engage with different opportunities in the biomedical fields and biotechnology fields. And those opportunities will be at the middle schools and high schools this year. And that is the end of our presentation. If there are any questions, we will field those at this time.
Any members? Ms. Milbury-Ellis.
What is SFS?
That is Science from Scientists, and that's a longstanding partnership that we have at the elementary schools, and they also work with our 6th grade classrooms. So they send scientists into our classrooms, and they do about 18 to 20 visits a year, and they do some hands-on inquiry-based lessons, and they have access to materials and equipment that we often wouldn't be able to have access to for a one-shot lesson one time a year.
And is that basically the same arrangement with the other partnership that you mentioned?
That's a similar
BioLab?
partnership at the elementary level as Mass Bioed will be at the middle school and high school level. There's a little fly up here. Yeah, it's exciting.
It got really excited.
Wants to know about bioed.
Yeah. Any other questions for us?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Franti.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Guys, great job getting the grants. So these grants are a one-time thing, or can we apply for them every year, or?
Those are good questions. So the Rethinking Grading Grant, there's an opportunity to extend that for a second year. This is the second year that the state has had the accelerating math grant. I am not sure if they will have it extended for a third year, but we were able to use some of it last year to fund our ST math implementation as well.
So the Gleam grant is the same. I just applied for the extension of the grant. So that's, the initial grant was a little over 120,000. I just applied for 206,000, which was the maximum allowed. And we understand it to be a formality with DESE, but obviously we had to put our time and effort into the application, and that will be for this school year.
Right, thank you.
I think I'll share that. One thing that's typical with the Department of Education grants is they give a smaller amount in a first year to see what a district or an applicant can do. And as long as you demonstrate success and hard work, then they give you a larger funding source to really implement and codify the work, so.
Mrs. Rizzo.
Yes, I'm really excited about the grading grant. Can you tell me, the other 4 districts, I know Melrose is one of them, are those similar to what we're trying to do? And are we working all together?
I have trouble with the on button here. So we haven't got to meet them yet, but we understand that, so we attended all the info sessions to receive the grant. You couldn't be someone who had done no work with grading, but you couldn't be a district that had completely, revamped your whole system. So they are all districts like us who have done, from our understanding, a significant amount of work, but haven't been able to fully implement. And like I said before, they really recognize that with high schools, there's a separate set of concerns that need to be addressed. So we're excited to have DESE's support and Department of Higher Ed to try to figure those things out.
Yeah, it would be great to do all that, Sharon, and I really look forward to this work, especially for the higher education piece, so that our students are still looked at in the manner that they should be. Thank you for that work.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great work.
So the next item on the superintendent's report is school building updates, but I'd like to reverse that with Part C, which is COVID update. Since we have our public health nurse, Lauren Buck, here with us, if the school committee doesn't mind, I'll go out of order on that. Okay. Come on up, Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Kelly, would you like me to do kind of like a broad overview?
Sure. We were working on this document until, I don't know what time, like 2 o'clock this afternoon, but Lauren and I were able to spend some time on a public health call earlier the week with the Safer Teachers, was it last week? Last week, oh my God. Safer Teachers, Safer Students program that I've been participating in for a couple of years. But we used that and some input from DESE and Lauren's invaluable sources herself and the folks that she connects with to start to map out a COVID policy for our return to school. And I can share it if you want to talk to it.
Sure. So I will start with, again, a broad overview, and if there's any specific questions, we can drill down. We hope that this guidance meets the goal of keeping kids in school as much as possible safely. That's the goal for this year in terms of COVID policy. There are still some CDC guidelines that we have to, abide by in terms of isolation, and those are baked into the policy. There are some new things that we want to add into our protocol this year, and then some things that we will not be continuing from last year. So first of all, scenario of anyone who tests positive for COVID, unfortunately, the CDC still requires a 5-day isolation, so we will be abiding by that. We will, again, so a 5-day isolation period from date of positive test or date that symptoms began. We are going to be able to return our students or staff on day 6 if they're symptom-free, and they're able to wear a mask for the next 5 days. If they're not able to wear a mask effectively for the next 5 days, they will have to do a 10-day isolation period, and this is consistent with CDC guidance currently. A difference, the next scenario is people who have been exposed to COVID. This is different from last year. This is an updated policy with DESE and CDC. So anyone who's been exposed to a positive person in school, at home, we do not need to require a quarantine anymore. Which is really good. I mean, that means that a lot more kids and staff will be able to stay in school. Obviously, the big caveat here is as long as someone is asymptomatic. So if someone is exposed to COVID and they remain asymptomatic, they will be able to continue in school regardless of vaccination status. If they ever develop symptoms, obviously we'd want them to go home and test that day, or potentially test on site, which is something that we're going to talk about next. If they test positive on their own or at home during their, after being exposed, they're just going to follow the protocols that they would, that anyone who tests positive from the first section. Okay, so then the next kind of policy that we want to implement this year is symptomatic testing, which we did not do last year. So we're hoping to employ this policy by our school nurses. In the beginning of the school year, we want to reassess periodically to determine if it's effective or not. Obviously, we want to make sure that anyone who's symptomatic stays home. We know that there are going to be symptomatic kids and staff in school. So how do we address that? But I just want to, put on record that we want anyone who's symptomatic to stay home, to get tested, and obviously anyone who's experiencing illness, we want the first step to be contacting their primary care provider. We know in the COVID world that chain of, consulting a healthcare provider has gotten broken a lot of times, but we'd always like to go back to that the healthcare provider is the first point of contact if your child or you are not feeling well. Okay, so if a symptomatic student or staff is on site, we want them to be evaluated by the school nurse who will determine if it's appropriate to have a rapid antigen test. Binax is a common brand, iHealth is a common brand. They're sold everywhere now, but we will hopefully have them stocked in the school nurse's office. So the school nurse would do an assessment, determine if a rapid antigen test is appropriate based on symptoms, or if the student or staff needs to go right home and be evaluated by a provider, or if the student or staff can return to the classroom without the test. The school nurse will perform the test. And then if negative, the school nurse will still be evaluating the student, staff, and assess the need for the student or staff to be sent home, even if the test was negative. Again, this would be based on symptoms. If they determine that the student or staff can stay in school, masking is strongly encouraged until symptoms are resolved. And then obviously, if we do a rapid test on site and it's positive, we would be requiring the student or staff to isolate, mask, go home immediately, and observe the isolation period that anyone who is positive needs to abide by. Okay, and so I think that's all about symptomatic testing. The last component, masking in schools, is not going to be mandatory in the beginning of the year unless they're in that 5-day window following that 5-day isolation period. So the 5-day isolation period for a positive test, and then the 5 days after in the school, in the week following that 5-day isolation, they're required to wear a mask. So that's the only time that the masking is mandatory. We want to just a quick note that, and this is DESE guidance and really good practice, that even during that 5-day mandatory window of masking, student and staff can still eat and drink and so remove the mask while eating and drinking and going outside. That's just, that's good practice and within DESE guidance. Masking is encouraged for any students that feel more comfortable doing so. We'll obviously support any student or staff who wants to keep a mask on. Strongly encouraged for masking for anyone who's immunocompromised, anyone who has family at home that are immunocompromised, or if they're advised by their healthcare provider. And then finally, a couple of the things that we're removing from our protocol from last year. I'll just go down the list. So pool testing, test and stay, which we removed the middle of last year, contact tracing, and then the Revere Public Schools COVID dashboard that was updated weekly on the website. All of those things are being removed from the protocol that's before you. And I think that's it.
So if I could mention one other thing that Lauren and I had talked about was I had shared with the committee that we have 10,000 test kits that we received from the state a couple of weeks ago. We picked them up. And our initial strategy was to give those out to every student and every teacher so that they could self-test before school started when they came in on either the 29th or the 30th, and then use the second test when they came back from the holiday break, the extra long weekends that we have. And one of the suggestions that Lauren had was, rather than do that and lose our whole resource all in one fell swoop, we're not, I mean, the most of those 10,000 units are going to test negative, right? That an alternative strategy would be to keep them and deploy them to the nurses' offices and have them to use all year long, so that if an adult or a child was symptomatic, we would be able to test them very quickly and see how they were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll also just mention that the Public Health Department has a stockpile of about 3,000 as well. So all combined, we think we have about 13,000 tests. That's not including the buy next kits that might have been left over from last year. So I think we're actually in a pretty good position in terms of number of tests in the beginning of the year. Obviously, we know those will not last the whole year, but that's why we want to reassess the policy and see if it's working based on supply and effectiveness.
Mr. Kingston.
That was what I was going to ask. When do they expire?
So the 3,000 that we have expire in October. However, that is, so all of the rapid COVID tests are under EUA. I'm sure we're all familiar with that term now. It basically means that they're currently still, like, they're evaluating as we use. So I expect that October expiration date to potentially be moved forward, but I also would recommend that we use those 3,000 in the beginning because they have a expiration date that's pretty, that's earlier on than the other ones.
I know that two of the physicians on that call said that they are already researching the effectiveness and that they're finding it fully effective.
Yeah. That's what they're finding with a lot of these expiration dates. It's just because they're studying as we use and learning that they remain effective for a lot longer. They're just always cautious, everyone's cautious and makes expiration dates short just because they don't want it to become effective, not effective, and people would be using them. So I anticipate that might get extended, but I also think that we could use those 3,000 right at the beginning of the year to kind of alleviate that fear.
Mr. Franti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lauren, when's the expiration date on the other 10,000 that we just picked up?
We have those. I'll have to take a look at it. I don't think it's too much longer after that.
So are they usually good for like 3 months?
Yeah, so initially it's a 3-month window about that they give you, but as I mentioned, they're usually extending it.
Right.
So it's hard for us to say if they'll extend. The brand that we have is the iHealth. It's the orange boxes. Binex is another common brand. I'm not sure what the brand is that you picked up. iHealth, yeah. And so those are the ones that have been extended pretty regularly, the expiration dates.
Thank you.
Ms. Milbury-Ellis.
Could you just clarify what you had said about the policy with respect to if a child has symptoms but tests negative? Did you say that they would be sent home?
Yeah, so I can definitely clarify that. So if a child tests negative but has symptoms, I think we need to rely on nursing assessment in that situation. Nurses have been dealing with COVID, our school nurses have been dealing with COVID for many years now and know kind of what to look for in terms of multiple symptoms together. Or the scenario that I like to use is potentially someone comes down with a runny nose, but knows that they have allergies or something like that, test negative. If we can attribute symptoms to something else that's an expected finding at this time of year or something that's common for the student. Another good example is headaches. Headaches are something that potentially could come down and a nurse might assess that they need a COVID test. But if the test is negative, would determine that maybe the student just didn't eat that day or something like that and would be able to go back. However, there are many scenarios where a symptom assessment by a nurse with a negative COVID test there's still a little bit of an uncertainty that the nurse would feel, and so they would need to send the student home because based on symptoms, maybe there's multiple symptoms, maybe the symptoms are significant enough that they think the child needs to go home as well. So I want to leave a little bit of room for nursing judgment there, with also another tool in the toolbox, which is the COVID test.
Any other members? Mrs. Rizzo?
Just, can we get a copy of the policy that you came up with?
Yes, I'll email it right now.
Thank you. And Laura, I can't say enough about the work you have done, not only just for the city, the school district, nurse hirings. You've been phenomenal, and always with the smile.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, the last item, I think, right? Is school building updates, and this will, it's just brief, I don't have a presentation, but as the school committee knows, because you have all voted on these projects along with the city council, I just wanted to give some updates on some of the accelerated repair projects that we have going on, and also the core program at the high school. So I'll start with the Beachmont School, where the boiler replacement project has been moving along and going very well. We expect that to have substantial completion on September 15th and final completion on October 15th. There is one piece of the job that they're going to be doing, replacing air handlers in the gym at the Beachmont. And because of supply chain issues, that's not going to happen until November. But they will still be able to commission the boilers and have everything up and running and tested in time for the winter season, which is great. At the Lincoln School, we have been moving forward on the new door and window project. And that is good timing since our air conditioning project finished last spring. And I'm hoping we'll have some nice hot days in September that we can benefit from that program, benefit from that. Also just because I like warm weather. But so with the air conditioning project completed, the windows and doors are set to go out to bid at the end of September, with anticipation that we'll start that project as soon as school gets out in June of 2023, which sounds like it's a long way off, but by the time we do the bid process, we'll blink and it'll be here. And then finally, I just wanted to mention the Riviera High School, the new high school project, which is ongoing. The school building committee has another meeting scheduled for this Thursday, and that is open to the public. You can find the link for that on the Riviera Public Schools website. And we hope people can join and engage in that project. We're still plugging away at our design plans and working with the city on the eminent domain process, and hope to have some progress there soon. And that's it from the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. We'll move on to the report of subcommittees. Mrs. Rizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the Policy Subcommittee, we would like to make a recommendation that our handbooks for 2022-2023 be approved with some corrections that we made along the way or input.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Rizzo, seconded by Ms. Franti. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo,
Yes?
Mr. Ferranti,
Yes.
Mrs. Gravellisi,
Yes.
Mr. Kingston,
Yes.
Mrs. Milbury Ellis,
Yes.
Ms. Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. Any other subcommittee reports? Okay, seeing none. Move on to motions. None. Mrs. Rizzo?
No, Susan, I believe you have one?
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to put that in new business so that in case anyone wants to talk about it.
Okay, so no. Okay. Okay, we'll close motions and move to old business. Any old business that any members want to discuss? Ms. Milbury Ellis.
I would just ask for, would it be appropriate to ask for an update on the program with the vocational school? The pilot program that we had talked about earlier on?
Update on that. I'll reach out to him.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? None. We'll move on to new business. Mrs. Gravellisi? Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under old business, the committee had asked for some information on the exit surveys that we do with staff members who are leaving the district, and Dr. Mokaba put this report together for you. I almost forgot about it. So I just want to share this information with the committee. What is this? Why is it showing it this way? Okay. Just share my screen first. I don't know how to make this look. Sorry. Okay, that's the best I can do. Paul, can I share my screen? All right. So first of all, a quick summary of staff changes. There are 77 staff members who are not returning to the Revere Public Schools for the school year. 15 of them have requested leaves of absence. And I should say, these numbers change every day. We had somebody who resigned today, so they're a little bit off right now. But our anticipation is that when people request a leave of absence, that they're going to return to us. Whereas people who resign, we don't have that same anticipation. So we have 15 people who requested leaves of absence, 52 who resigned, 4 of whom had been on a leave of absence for the previous year. Is it not showing? I think it's... It's the way PowerPoint works. All right, hold on. If I can get over to this screen, which I can't. Let me see. If I do. I'm going to try to fix this. Sorry. This machine. All right, let me go to... Let me talk about something for a minute. All right, let me try it this way. Okay, there we go. Sorry. So 15 folks have asked for a leave of absence for the school year. 15 people, and then 52 resignations, 4 of whom had been on a leave of absence last year, and 10 non-renewals. So really 62 people that we know are not coming back to us. And of them, 27 chose to take the exit survey. We obviously can't mandate that. And so the information that I'm going to share on the next slide is really pulled from multiple sources. One is the exit survey, but also from the resignation letters that people submitted and from conversations that teachers had with their administrators when they let them know that they were leaving. And what they shared with us is that 18%, and this is of the entire 62 people, 18% were relocating, 16% said the commute was too much for them. 15% had received promotional positions in other districts. 11% said they were seeking better salary or benefits. And 20% said that they were dissatisfied with the leadership or the management. And then if we look just at the survey results, so now what comes from now on is just from the 27 people who responded. We asked them about if they felt the goals and expectations of the job were reasonable. And of these 27 people, about 59% said they agreed or disagreed. So almost 60%. We asked them if there was a spirit of teamwork. And about 55 or 56% felt that there was, that it was good or excellent. We asked how effective the feedback was from their supervisors, and 63% felt that it was, felt strongly or agreed that it was good. Overall communication within the department, a little bit higher at about 67%, felt that was good or excellent. And then about orientation and on-the-job training, that was one of the lowest ranked, only 48% felt like that was good or excellent. On the other hand, if we can include the middle there, it jumps up much more significantly than the other ones did, the other measures did. They were asked 3 other questions at the end of the survey. One was if they had any concerns regarding ethical issues or compliance. There were a variety of responses to that. We asked if they would consider working for the Revere Public Schools again in the future. 14 said yes out of the 27. And if they had any other comments. And Dr. Mokamba summarized the comments saying several cited a wonderful experience, students and colleagues, areas of growth, particularly in the areas of special education, EL services and programming, and challenges with morale and leadership. None of which is a surprise to us, especially after last school year.
Any members?
Could we
Mrs. Rizzo.
possibly get a copy of this? And also, I'm kind of curious, the morale and leadership, if maybe you can just let us know later if it was from a certain area or just spread out through all our schools.
I will ask Dr. Mokamba for
That
that.
part makes me sad.
I know. When, yep. It was definitely a year of low morale, but everybody knows,
Any other members? Ms. Chai.
You know, some people just couldn't work through the pandemic or couldn't do the work that they had been doing successfully all along. They just hit a wall and couldn't keep going. And I give credit to those who felt that they needed to leave the position they were in and try something else. And I think on the whole, people found it obviously a positive experience with the numbers there that you just showed us. So I'm always sad to see people go. But on the other hand, everybody has to fly in their own lane, so good luck to all of them.
Thank you, Ms. Chai. Okay. We'll move on to new business. Ms. Scravlisi.
Thank you, Mayor Arrigo. During our 5 o'clock committee of the whole meeting, Dr. Kelly had brought some suggestions from the wish list from some of the different schools of what they would like to add into their schools. We have an ETL teacher at Revere High School that she talked about would like to be added, math interventionist at the Whaling, restorative practice at the high school, and a professional development type program at the high school. If Dr. Kelly would like to explain that to the public so that we can.
Yeah, I mean, as the committee knows, we go through this budget process in the fall, and we're trying to predict what we need and what life is going to bring us in the ensuing school year. And we try to do so with budget in mind and understanding that we have limited resources no matter what. And then as we continue to do the work of turning over the payroll and understanding exactly what our Chapter 70 funding is, and all of those pieces come into picture, we get a clearer view of what money we have and what we're able to support. So these were particularly the math interventionists at the Wayland and the extra ETL at the high school were requests that those principals had made back when we were building the budget in the spring. And I had said to them, not now. If we find out that we're in an okay financial place, then maybe we can reconsider it. And then since then, as you know, the administration at the high school has turned over, and Mr. Bowen really wants to make a strong effort to help with our restorative practices initiative to help kids take responsibility for their own actions when they're maybe not as positive as we would like them to be. And the same for adults. And so he would like to have a full-time dedicated position to do that work. And his vision is to have a program, it's called Rise Up, and that stands for something. But there would be students who would be in this class, they would take it as an elective. And maybe 6 or 7 students each period would be assigned to this class with their teacher. And so that when there was an issue with one of their peers, the peer would be sent to the Rise Up room. And the students would help that student work through in real time what the issue is and come up with a plan for any restorative practice that's needed, whether it's a conversation with the teacher or a conversation with another peer, and help the student navigate that challenge in real time instead of having kids stew in the assistant principal's office while they're waiting for an hour, while the assistant principal's tied up doing something else and nothing really gets resolved. So that's kind of the vision for the program. It's still a work in progress, and he has to identify the right individual to run that program. But that's how it's envisioned, and it will help all of the kids who take that class as an elective and the students who engage in the class because they've run into some kind of a problem, really develop their own coping skills and their own ability to interact with others in more positive ways.
Any other members?
And I forgot about the professional development program that you mentioned, Mrs. Gravelisi, was the NUVUX program, NUVUX. And that is a program that focuses on teaching students through a project-based initiative, more of a deeper learning experience. But the key thing that's different about them compared to what we've been doing so far through MCIEA and the Kaleidoscope Initiative and our own deeper learning initiatives is that they're really focused on interdisciplinary work. So I know that Mr. Bowen wants to have a team that's going to engage in this kind of work and use it as a model to try to expand our own skill set in developing these interdisciplinary units that will reshape how we're really teaching kids as we go forward.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Ty.
I will make a motion that we hire people for the positions, except I'll have to have Dr. Kelly repeat the name of each. What was the Rise Up?
Sure, as Mrs. Gravelisi said, it's an ETL at the high school, a Wayland math interventionist, a restorative practices interventionist at the high school, that's the...
Right.
And then some professional development, we can call it, for teachers on project-based learning.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Ty, seconded by Ms. Milbury Ellis. Roll call.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo,
Present?
Mr. Ferranti,
Yes.
Mrs. Gravelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Kingston,
Yes.
Mrs. Milbury Ellis,
Yes.
Ms. Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. Any further business from any school committee members? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Anyone? All right. We will adjourn until our September meeting. Thank you.